to Eager to Hear, the amazing podcast featuring some guys who talk about music. I'm Cy. We got Alex and Andrew and Bill from the Donors.
Yeah, episode 22.
I think we should start by playing the song, and then we'll talk about it.
Oh yeah, we're gonna start with Fragments by Donors.
Oh shit.
Get excited.
Are we good to like swear? Is swearing okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. It's fucking fine.
Yeah.
Just gotta make sure, man.
Let's see. Hold on one sec. I gotta figure this thing out. I just had it.
Thought we were ready.
Technical difficulties.
Oh, I skipped earthquakes, now we're gonna fragments.
So why don't you tell us about what went into that song and where it comes from, and a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well that song was one of those gifts. Really, it didn't come from very far. One of those mornings, I was sitting on my bed and I just started playing, and just sang that, and it pretty much came out exactly like that, minus all of the heavy-handed production. And yeah, just one of those gifts, man. Like it's. I woke up and I had a late start for work, and it was like a Wednesday, and that's about it. It was just strumming my guitar before work, and it just happened, and that's how you kind of wish all songs would come out, really. But that's one of them, and it just sort of stayed that way. And then I started, I recorded it for the first time in about 2010, and then I reworked it again a couple of years later, and then I decided to rework it again and then I spent another 3.5 years on it.
What was some
And
of
that's
like the early versions? I assume were different. How did
very
it
lo-fi.
start, and how did it get to where it is now?
Well, it started off basically as just I mean, it's a laptop production all the way. It's as bedroom as it gets. Started off, I recorded it on a really crappy old laptop that I had back then, and it was sort of, the arrangement was the same, but it had the same guitar riff, but it just sounded really crappy, really shitty lo-fi. But it got the point across, and some of it was the same. Like there's violin samples all through that, which are the exact same ones from the original recording. And then at one point, yeah, I finished that one, as it were, to the best of my capabilities at the time. And then I got a new computer, and I got a keyboard, and I got a whole lot of gear, little mixing desk and stuff, and a bunch of effects. And so I started reworking a bunch of things now that I had the capability to do so.
So it was always that sort of dreamlike sound.
That groove to it, yeah, absolutely. But it's a lot more sort of, yeah. The second version was all piano. I took out all the guitar and I just made it all piano. So that it was sort of built on the same structure though and tempo. So when it came to doing it for the third time, I could use the piano from the second version and the redo all of the guitar, but keep a lot of the samples and the various random sounds and elements like that from the first version. And I just kind of used a little bit of everything and threw a whole lot more on top. And then it came down to the vocals as well, like using really shit microphones in a bad environment, never really being able to get a decent vocal. So there came a point after the first time I did it that I sort of gave up singing for a few years actually, and then I decided I was going to do this album. 4 years ago that I decided I was going to do this album, and so I bought a decent microphone interface and all that kind of carry on, and I got my shit together and I did it properly, and so it ended up taking another 3.5 years, like I say, on and off. The undulations of our inspiration. I went months of just going, I really need to do this. I really need to just finish this album, put it behind me so I can do something else. And yeah, it just wasn't working on it at all. So it kind of finally came together late last year, around August. I just finished it and I got it out in October. That sounded a lot better. I said before we started that I wasn't overly happy with the sound of it, but it's all right.
Okay, so what's the mentality you have when you say that you hate all your music?
I think it's the same mentality that everybody has about it. It's just I can only really think of it in terms of gone into producing it, and so I don't have any real perspective on whether they're good songs anymore. The songs I ultimately chose for the album were the ones over the years that other people have seemed to like. Something here and there about one of my tunes, I'll be like, well, so and so said that was a good one, so I'll use that. But my own perspective on whether my songs are good or not at this point, because most of the songs on this album are at least as old as that one. No, that's not true. But they're up to as old as that one, but they're all a few years old. And as much time, like there's a good 60 odd hours I estimate goes into each song producing them. Like I say, it's all just done in my bedroom on a laptop, so it sort of becomes a silk purse out of a sow's ear situation sometimes, and so I can hear all the faults in it. Out of a sow's ear. Trying to make something good out of something shit. A sow, like a pig's ear.
Oh, okay.
It must be an English saying.
Putting diamonds and
Sorry,
shit.
yeah.
Trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. It means trying to make shit into something good.
Well, maybe
Trying
that's
to
the best
polish
way
a
to do
turd
it.
into a diamond.
Sometimes that's the best way
But
to
Everything sucks until it's good.
Though, so having to work with that, I know the amount of times that I've listened to it and then made a whole list. You think you've finished it, and then it's just I end up with 20 things I need to fix, and then I go back and I do that, and it takes me another day, like 12 hours solid, 16 hours in a day. I forget to eat, and then and you just keep going back, and it's never really finished. So that all of that sort of anxiety of just doing it and making it sort of takes thrill of actually writing the thing. You sort of you forget, you don't really have the, like I say, I don't know how to feel about the songs themselves at this point.
If you could tell something to yourself at the beginning of making this album, you said that this was a 4-year process, and I assume you've learned some things in the process of finishing it. And if you could go back to
so
the
much.
day you started working on this album and give some you say.
Well, I thought at that point I can do things now that I couldn't previously do. As far as VST plugins and things like that and the effects that I was using and what I had, it was just so much more than what I'd previously had to use. And I thought, well, this is the time. And I was unemployed. I lost my job. I was working for a bank. So I lost my job after 4 years. I had a bit of savings, and I thought, well, it's a now or never type situation. I'm going to make the best album I possibly can I'm going to put together the best music I can. I'm going to write the best songs I've ever written, and I'm going to produce it my ability. I'm going to do it entirely by myself without any help from anyone, and it's going to be on my laptop. And the learning curve, I thought that I had what I needed to do at the time, and the amount of times that I'd go back and I'd strip everything out and I'd redo it again with all new plugins, because I've now got better ones throughout that process. Just how to master an album and how to actually suites and things like that properly, because that's kind of a black art in itself. And I didn't take it to a mastering suite or anything like that. I didn't spend a cent on it. I used all free plugins, and I did all of the mixing and mastering myself. I did all of the instruments myself, so I play about 27 different instruments across the album, as well as all the samples and things I'm using. So yeah, a lot of work went into it, but as I was going, obviously, I learned a lot of stuff, and now I could do it again from scratch, and it would be 5 times as good. And so that's a really big deal, because I got lots of things on the board at the moment, and it's just going to be better going forward now. So yeah, I'm glad that I finally got it out.
So if you could said one thing to yourself 4 years ago, it would just be like,
what I say?
You're not ready yet. You're going to get better at this.
Yeah, I'd say watch some YouTube tutorials. Watch some of those 10 biggest mistakes everyone makes with EQing and mastering and compression and things like that. Just watch all of them, like I have been doing for the last 12 months. Because, I mean, there's a lot of it that you already know, but even reaffirming what you know is important. And so, I would say that for sure.
The context of everything else.
What was that? Sorry?
When you go back over stuff you already know and you're in the process of learning a bunch of new stuff, you sort of recontextualize it and you check your foundational knowledge.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm doing so much of it haphazardly that, I make it up as I go along, and then something properly, and I'm like, oh, okay. Sometimes it's exactly the way I've been doing it, and that always makes you feel good. Like, oh, okay, so I've been getting that right. And then it might be just a slight tweak here and there, like you might be getting an aspect of it right, but other things that you're getting wrong. I've to learn across the board, every single element of everything that you do. There's always so much more to learn. I'm really aware of what I don't know now, more so than I was. I used to be a commercial producer for radio for 8 years. Anyway, full time, just making radio ads. And after I stopped doing that, I moved to Australia from New Zealand in 2009, and I just, as it were. But by about 2012, I was pretty convinced that I knew.
Should we listen to the song?
Do you want to go for?
We can play another song.
Yeah, Make Sure It's Dead. You want to go with that one?
Make Sure It's Dead. Yeah.
Okay.
This is one of the new ones that I wrote. When I decided to make the album, I thought I made actually 50 new songs, and only about 2 of them ended up on it. But this is one of them, and so this is like the radio friendly one. This is the single.
Because I really like that last one.
Thanks.
Okay, this is Make Sure It's Dead. Oh shoot. Okay, let's see.
You're listening to Awkward Silence.
What? I know. Right?
I said you're listening
Okay,
to
hold
Awkward
on.
Silence.
Hang it. Oh, this is okay. I messed up.
Morbid sound.
Well, I'm trying to figure out the sound thing I have.
You're
Oh,
listening to your own room.
Sorry. Okay, hold on.
It's like a cover of John
we
Cage's
might need another
433.
question because I messed it up. Yeah.
Well, we ask everyone who comes on the show, what's your ideal sandwich?
Ideal sandwich, pretty
Yeah, I know.
straightforward.
I'm
eh?
sorry, that's
I was
not
thinking
like a
about this the
technical
other day.
question.
My ideal sandwich is we're listening to this.
No, I just gotta skip it. I'm sorry.
That song is called "Make a Deal."
Okay, that was Make a Deal. Okay.
I like that one.
Should I go back?
One more ideal sandwich. Question.
Wait.
You had it before, actually.
Oh, I messed it up. Okay. I'm the best DJ on earth.
Getting a little sneak preview. That was Hidden Camera. That's a good song. I like that. It's my anthem for the paranoiacs of the world.
All right, let's go with Hidden Camera. Then we'll go back to make sure it's
A long one.
We got time.
Congratulations, you are the new Lord and Savior. And your face is all over the papers, laying graces to the days. From the tribe to the earth, and there's no one better. Come on down, you are the chosen one, and this has all been about you. Hear that crowd calling your name like you're gone, and now you'll never be alone. Take me into your little room and make sure to gauge my reaction. Interrogate me the old-fashioned way, and we'll stop by the hands of election. And you try to run. You see the box is empty, and the hidden camera is out of war, and the lights are warm. Try to be good, but the world won't let you. Come on down, you are the chosen one, and this has all been about you. Hear that crowd calling your name like a god, 'cause there is nothing above you. So come on down, your kingdom awaits and your plans are all dying to meet you. And when you see your name in lights, you will know that this hasn't been easy. Try to see the box is empty, and the hidden camera
Walrus.
Yeah, I really like that one too.
Yeah, the skittering
Same.
in the back half, especially, were just cool.
Did it sound good
So
on
that
your
was
end?
sounds pretty good here. Yeah,
good.
that's quite well produced actually. Big shout out to my cousin on that one. I got to mention her. She'll probably never hear this, but my 10-year-old cousin, she was 10 at the time, plays drums on that for a couple of parts.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think the first chorus and the second bridge or something is Jasmine Miola. She's way better than me. Certainly now.
That's the important part of collaborating. You make up for your own weaknesses by filling them in with other people's talents. That's what we
Absolutely,
have.
yeah. It's all about family. She's one of the only guest appearances on the whole album actually.
And she didn't even get a featured credit.
She does have a feature credit. I just don't know. There are no credits. I
You're gonna
think
get
there's
sued.
one of the places. Yeah, she's gonna be after my millions, man. I think
Yeah.
I've made dollars so far. So
How many
I'm gonna buy a
dollars?
safe. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
I heard exactly sound cut out hours.
Dollars?
Dollars.
Oh, dollars. Yeah. I've made about $20.
Oh, that's good though.
Ooh.
It's more than I made on my music.
Yeah, it's better than nothing. But prior to that, I think I made I got a royalty check once for playing covers. No, sorry, for playing originals, dumbass, not cover. But I've got I think $62 for playing some gigs, and then I went up to the guy at the venue who at the pub we used to hang out, and I was like, I got a royalty check, and he was a drummer at one point in a big New Zealand band, and he was just like, to pay it, and I was like, oh, gutted. I didn't realize it worked that way, so it was the only royalty check I ever got. I didn't really like the idea of it's just for me to play music at their pub, even though they were paying me anyway.
So
Like,
when you, sorry, was someone else about to ask? When you start creating these soundscapes for these songs, how do you guide yourself? What are you going for? What are your ideals for what a song should sound like?
I like, you're kind of dreamy. Before I think of it more as a kind of a narcotic sort of. It's hard to say what I'm going for. I guess I'm just going for that sort of that vibe, that sort of Radiohead, Pink Floyd, otherworldly sort of vibe. The idea of the way that dreams, the sort of images come in and out, and your mind sort of presenting itself. Sorry, I just burped. But I guess that's sort of the thing. I mean, Radiohead would be my favorite band in terms of that style of production. I do lots of other things with various other bands. So, I play in an Irish punk band. I play mandolin. I do all
That's
sorts
cool.
of different things. So
What's it
this,
called?
they're called the Dangerous Folk.
No, the band.
Called Shipping Up to Brisbane. That's been doing really well, actually.
Heading up to Brisbane.
Then yeah, the Dangerous Folk. That's worth checking out.
Okay,
But it's very,
worth
very
checking out.
different. It's kind of like I'm thinking of because I'm on my own. It's sort of that Tom York sort of style. There's a lot of Neil Young there. I think of Bob Dylan and John Lennon in terms of songwriters that I try to follow in the footsteps of, as it were. So yeah, definitely going for that sort of psychedelic feel. I use a lot of guitar pedals. So I bring in a lot of the sounds that you hear are heavily affected guitars, most of them actually. And then I'll just
What
use
about
lots of
the
synthesizers. and
other
things like that.
25 instruments?
Oh, yeah, there's various percussion, ukulele, mandolin, as I said, melodica, which is kind of a keyboard thing. You blow into it, sounds a bit like an accordion. I've got an accordion, which I can't really play.
Did that make
Definitely
the
can't
cut
play.
onto the album?
The melodica certainly did, yeah.
the
And the xylophone. The accordion, I don't believe so, no, because it's a piece of crap and it doesn't quite make the grade sonically. It's about the only one, actually, of the instruments I actually own, but I've just got a grab bag of nonsense. Some of them are essentially toys, but they have a kind of a nice effect. The xylophone I have is an absolute toy, but I've used that on quite a lot of things. So yeah, I just use anything I can get my hands on, really. Like those Bolivian flutes that you always get, those wooden flute things you buy at markets and things all the time. Sometimes I'll use them. A lot of those I won't remember what I've used and where, but I would say that the bulk of it starts off. Tame Impala, do you know the band Tame Impala? They're a big sort of Australian band. They were huge at the time that I was making this album. So a lot of it is about just those sorts of layers and sort of swathes of sound that sort of wash in and wash out heavily. But the foundations of the songs were very straightforward, almost. I'm quite sure. I think of a band like Crowded House, who are a huge Kiwi band, one of the only Kiwi bands I think that Americans like yourselves would have heard of, possibly. But it's just sort of acoustic guitar, piano, drums, bass. That's how I start every song. So it's got a very foundation, and then I can just build on that with various effects. And I just listen to it, and I think what it needs and where it needs it sort of dynamically, and I just play around until I get something I like. I never hit the mark. You never get the thing that you actually want, that you're hearing in your head. You always end up with something completely random and different in your attempts to find that perfect sound. But what you end up with is often something you could never have imagined anyway. Like in that song we just listened to, there's a very strange sort of keyboard which is just all random notes, or sort of really bizarre sounding keyboard that I just sort of dialed up on a synthesizer plugin, and I don't even know what it was. I wouldn't be able to find it again if you asked me, but it's in the song. So things like that just sort of happen fairly spontaneously, and hopefully for the best.
Makes sense. So about the sandwich.
The old sandwich.
Very
question.
difficult to get a standard salad sandwich in this country. Everyone's into all of the focaccias and the paninis and these Turkish breads and shit. I just want a standard sandwich: lettuce, tomato, cucumber, bit of chicken, mayonnaise, maybe some mustard, pepper, cut it in half diagonally, and that'd be my lunch every day.
Yeah, diagonally's the best. Yeah, I don't know why people cut it like parallel or whatever. I don't know why people do that.
It's wrong, no.
Usually
Not as
when I
much
do it, it's
surface.
to feel like a rebel.
Well, you should just cut it all fucked up if you want to be rebellious. There's nothing too rebellious about cutting it straight.
Oh no, it's
It's-
like, walking near a stay off the grass sign. It's like the slightest injection of rebelliousness in an otherwise boring life.
Yeah, no, you're treading dangerously.
So do you plan on releasing more music soon under the donors?
I can't imagine anything coming up this year.
It just takes a while.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's always things. I've got hundreds of unfinished pieces, memos off my phone, things like that, ideas that haven't started recording anything, but I've got a bunch of old things that I still want to redo. So yeah, there's lots of ideas for what the next album will be. It won't be recorded this year because I'm doing an album with another band I'm in called The Cooked Bullets. And well, I think we're just Cooked Bullets, and that's a two-piece. I do all the music, and I've got a guy, my friend Kane, who sings, and we've released one single so far. Oh no. Backed with another track called Digital Candle. So that album I've been mixing for the last 6 months. Haven't really started recording the vocals yet, but that's my big one for this year. And I've got another band. This is the last one, called The Liquid Eclectic, and I play bass in that band and occasionally guitar. And we're going to be probably writing and recording our second album this year too. So the donors are probably going to be on the back burner until at least 2020.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot going on. If you want to, after the show, if you want to like send me a message with like links to all the bands, I'll just put them in the description so people can check them out.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Will do. Plenty going on, but I don't have a job. I haven't been working for 6 months either, so I'm quite desperate to get some work. And,
Oh, yeah.
I've been burning through my savings in a terrifying way. And so, yeah, I am doing a lot of music, but unfortunately, it's all I'm doing at the moment. and
All
it's
right,
not
everyone buy Phil's
paying the
music
bills.
so he can, because he's unemployed.
Oh, you guys. Go on.
All right, so
It's almost like you get to promote an album.
that's the point of you being on
All
here,
of you
so
guys, if all of you, yeah, that's right. It's the first type of promotion I've actually done that isn't like Facebook. If all of you guys
Yeah, we
bought my
thought this
album, I
album
would
was
have my
cool
rent
and-
paid for a week.
A unique psychedelic vibe, and that's why we brought Phil on to talk about it.
Happy to be here. It's my first
So,
podcast as well. I haven't done anything like this before.
You in the audience, you can buy this album or listen to it on Spotify and give Phil your pennies.
It's on Spotify. It's on SoundCloud. It's on Bandcamp. That's
Oh, you
where
don't want to.
can
I
buy
don't
it.
want people to play it on SoundCloud. SoundCloud doesn't give you any
no,
money.
SoundCloud doesn't give you shit.
It got a passing mention. Don't listen to it on SoundCloud. It's shit. And I don't even know if they've mastered it with that Lander thing, but if they have, I'm sure it's even shitter. But yeah, go to Bandcamp because then you can purchase it, and it's like $7 Australian. So what would that be? About $5.50 for you. So not too much.
Oh yeah, that's not bad. It's a good deal for you get 10 or 8 songs.
And each
7
song
songs in the
represents
last song that I
60
don't
hours
actually
of
like.
labor. So you're like, you're buying labor
Yeah.
at 10 cents an hour.
10 cents
Yeah,
an
60
hour.
hours spread over
Get a
3.5
better deal
years.
than that anywhere.
All right, should we listen to another song? Should we
Yeah.
do Make Sure It's Dead?
Yes.
I think
Let's
I got
get
this figured
morbid.
out. I think I got the whole thing figured out. This is the first time we're using the soundboard, and I like that we can listen to the music and then talk about it. It's so much better.
The sound quality comes out a lot better than the other soundboard we tried.
That's good.
What a time
Want you to play.
to be Change at all.
of time. That was the one I said don't play at the start, but it's really just the beginning that I didn't like. And when you ask me
don't you like
what I would tell myself at the beginning of recording this album and what the next album will sound like, I'll say no more singing like that.
What's wrong with
No
that?
more trying to be Neil Young. Well,
No,
listen to my voice. Do you think that that's my natural singing voice?
No, but I don't assume any part of a dreamy production like that is necessarily natural.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah. No, not too bad. I should actually shout out to the drummer on That's Another Guest drummer, long-time collaborator Cameron Roydhouse. He's the John Bonham of Gold Coast, Australia. And he's the drummer for the Liquid Eclectic. He was in 2 previous bands I was in with him called the Moons of Jupiter and the Quick Millions. He drums for Cooked Bullets. So I've worked with him since 2010.
No, I see what you're saying about all the layers and all the layering of instruments and everything. It makes it sound really full and interesting.
Good.
Wait, what was that? Did we lose you?
I said that's my Hey Jude.
Oh yeah, perfectly. I get it.
In what way?
The way that it just ends with that repetitive crescendo at the end.
Oh, okay. I feel like there are a
Sort
lot
of
of
builds up and up.
distinct
It's the
things
same
about Hey
tempo.
Jude.
Oh, I love Hey Jude. I love the Beatles. I'm a shameless Beatles
love the
maniac. Those
story.
last 2 songs we played were very heavily. That was a Paul McCartney song. The last one you played was a John Lennon song.
Yeah, I can hear it a little bit. Okay, so what's the worst Beatles song?
That's a good question.
Wild Honey Pie.
That's a good answer.
Oh, there's some shit in the first 4 albums. It would be on Beatles for Sale, probably.
Revolution 9.
Revolution
that's
9,
amazing.
yeah, but that's not really
That's
a song.
influential in its own way. No one wants to make a copy of Wild Honey Pie.
I
No.
guess.
Revolution 9
never
at least
seen it covered.
inspires, who are like, wow, that looks easy. I want to try that.
That new White Album remix they've done is pretty freaking amazing. It sounds is like it should have always sounded. It was always badly produced. It's unreal now. It's great.
I agree. That was phenomenal. But also, I don't know about how bad the White Album was to start with, but there was still that amazing feeling of this is what you've been listening to, and then here's this slightly cleaner version of it.
It's so much more punchy, and I think it's just a little bit flat, the original mix. It's when you've got 30 songs to mix, I think maybe, they spent 24 hours putting it together in one session. I think that it just lacks a bit of punch, and the new version has got it. It doesn't sound modernized. It just sounds right. Anyway.
All right, we already asked.
What's your favorite way to build tension in a song?
Build tension in a song. Probably just the old-fashioned make the EQ go all dark, bring in it, slow it down, and just drop everything, and then bring it back. Big,
So
sort
production
of scary, high-pitched instruments doing repetitive riffs. So if you've got like a chord change and you just keep the same riff sort of ringing over the top with some weird vibrato and some swirly sort of, I use sort of when you turn up the dials on a delay unit and you get that space sort of sound. That's a great way to really build dynamic and make it move and make it feel like it's taking you somewhere. It's a dragon that you're riding, and it's taking you on a journey, like in the Never-Ending Story.
So have you played any Donor songs live in a live setting?
Nope.
No, it's just
A band called Typhoid Mary back in New Zealand, where it was they were just Donor songs that I'd done, but it's more like very heavy guitar stuff. This sort of stuff, this album, I can't think of a time when I ever played a song live. No, I don't think I have. I don't do live show. I like I say, I like to play in bands, but I don't like singing. I sang in that one band and I did not enjoy the experience of being the singer. I'm not a confident singer. of layers to get the singing sounding the way it does. There's about 9 of me on a lot of those songs. If there's harmonies and things, 13. Like, there's a lot of voices.
I think that's how many copies Brian May had of himself on your typical Queen album.
Absolutely. As long as it sounds good, like to me, it sounded better than having one voice, so I did it. A lot of if I was a really good singer, just sounded great, would cut it and it would be overdone with more. But I just sang it as quiet as I possibly could. That was my technique for the album, was to get that sort of falsetto, sort of very vulnerable sounding voice throughout, and I did it by singing as quietly as I possibly could.
That's interesting.
Just layering it like 4 times so it doesn't come out that way, and then adding harmonies.
Did that come from somewhere? Was that something that you heard someone else did to make some famous album?
It came from the fact that my voice is so low anyway, so when I sing other people's music in like a tenor voice, which is the standard range for rock singers, I'm singing falsetto anyway because I'm a bass. I'm literally like 2 ranges below your regular rock singer. So I'm singing those songs in a tenor, but it sounds like I'm singing falsetto. The reason it came about is because I just play in my bedroom. I write my songs. I have housemates. Sing as quietly as I can, I don't like people hearing me when I'm making something up because it's a dog's breakfast, at that point. So I sing really quietly in my room, and it just came about that I could sing better that way. And when I sing full voice, full throated, I don't like my voice. Stage in life, I was really into the way it sounded when I sung as quietly as I could, the way that I did sing. And I also was listening to a lot of Radiohead and Tom York, and I sing along to everything I listen to. So that was just the style of singing that I was into at the time. Now I'm into sort of bringing in my deeper voice, but still singing as quietly as I can, just bringing the register down a little bit.
What are some other specific lessons that you've taken from Radiohead?
Weird time signatures and not worrying about instrumentation. The thing I got from albums like Kid A was that you basically don't want any notes. You don't want any instruments hearing. Like, I listened to that Tom York's latest solo album, which came out a few years ago, around the time just before I started making this. So that was an influence. It's Tomorrow's Modern Boxes. I love that album. It's so understated, and is my favorite production in the whole world. I just love that extremely ambient, just kind of hanging there. It's got a bass and it's got a treble, but it kind of doesn't have anything in the middle.
I feel like that's almost
that was
modern production is going.
Take it out at 2 kilohertz. That's what I ran that album through a spectral analyzer, and I realized that the way to get that really warm sound is to take it all out at 2 kilohertz, and that's what I did on this album. So that's a very specific lesson. Singing quietly, and yeah, just trying to drop the bottom out of things, So you record your bass and your acoustic guitar and your piano and your conventional instruments, and then you try to replace them with things that are unconventional and just sort of have it just sort of hanging there. Middle ground between that extreme sort of Tom York style of everything just hanging there and sort of other styles of music that I'm into, which are more conventional, like Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, where it's about the song, and it always has to be about the song first and foremost. So like I said before, I'd start with that foundation of guitar, bass, drums, piano, and then I would start pulling things out and replacing them with these sort of synthesizers and weird ambience. A Radiohead, I think, you want it to sound like it isn't playing at all. It's a whole new form of sound. It gives that illusion. That's what Kid A kind of did, and Tomorrow's Modern Boxes as well. I heard that album. I used to say to people, there's no notes on this album. Like, how is it even music when there's no notes? So yeah, I love that kind of.
Well, there's rhythm.
Yeah, there's notes as well, but it's just that the way that they come across is so subtle. It's really hard to explain, but big influence.
What do you think was the first piece of music to really get you excited about music that you can remember?
Well, I used to listen to rap music and stuff. So, I mean, first, you want to go back to when I was a kid, it was Eye of the Tiger. My mum had an instrumental of that on a cassette tape with all like TV themes that came in the magazine. I was like 5 years old, and that was the only song. It had like Magnum PI theme and Hill Street Blues and all this crap. And at the end, it had Eye of the Tiger. It was the only one that was actually a rock song, and it was my favorite song in the world. And then it was like Man in the Mirror by Michael Jackson. But
Do you feel like
I hate
there's a
80s
bit of
music now.
Man in the Mirror in any of the music you're making now, or do you feel like it's pretty distant?
Oh no, it's right there. Man in the Mirror is a perfect song. It's like you can't write a better pop song than Man in the Mirror. That's always the kind of thing I'm aspiring to. First and foremost, it has to be a good song. All the production in the world isn't going to save a shit song. Man in the Mirror is a perfect song with perfect production. I love it. Most 80s music I find to be absolutely appalling now, but nothing. A great song is just a great song. But now, you know, it was actually Nevermind that completely changed my life. That's when I became a musician. I was listening to lots of rap music and things, Cypress Hill and Snoop Dogg, and that was kind of stuff I was into. And then I got my friend to dub me all the Nirvana albums onto cassette. And the last one that I got was Nevermind. And I listened to that on my new Walkman that I just bought for my birthday. And it was on lunch break at school. And I was listening to it just mind. It literally changed my personality to what it's been for the last 24 years. I went home and I said, can I get a guitar? And that weekend I got a guitar. And I've played guitar for hours.
What do you think it was about it that like made it so landmark? I mean, obviously there's the age of impression, but still.
Yeah, I'm such a conventional person when I think about it. But yeah, it was that album, man. It was just so dynamic, it's just so powerful and energetic and just angry. And it spoke to everything that a 14-year-old boy is experiencing. And they've done that study recently that 14-year-old boys and 13-year-old girls, that's the music you'll listen to the rest of your life. It's that age when it impacts you. It was from there I tried to find music that sounded like it, and I couldn't. None of the Soundgardens and Nirvana to me. I had to get into the Sex Pistols and Led Zeppelin, and then it became the Beatles, and it was Bob Dylan, Led Zeppelin, Nirvana, and Radiohead. They're the biggest bands in the world of all time to me, or artists. But it was Nevermind that changed me, made me like, I'm going to be a musician and I'm going to write songs for the rest of my life. This is what I do now. And it took up till Lithium. So what's that? Track 5, about 15 minutes.
I'm so happy because today I found my friends.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm singing there in the bridge, just singing along in front of all my classmates, singing, I like it, I'm not coming back. I didn't know the words, but I didn't care. I was loving that. It was just so powerful.
Yeah, I agree. Lithium is an incredibly powerful song.
Yeah,
I was
it really is.
wondering,
And straight after Breed.
Does it seem like Nirvana influence has sort of waned? I feel like there were in the 90s a lot of bands like Creed and Nickelback and Puddle of Mud that took like just the worst parts of Nirvana and made them like a commercial Blair thing. And since then, it seems like things that sound like Nirvana, I don't hear them anywhere. They're not, mainstream. They're not.
I didn't hear it then. Yeah, like they found someone that sounded vaguely like a Kurt Cobain sounded like, and yeah, like you say, all the worst aspects. I've never heard a band that actually sounds like Nirvana. The only band that's had the same sort of impact, almost in a homage or a pastiche, is the White Stripes. The first time I heard Seven Nation Army, I knew that there was something special there. That was, and I was like,
dude, yeah.
Elephant came out, and I was like, this is the new Nirvana for sure. But the White Stripes were like an homage to when music was good, as opposed to being new good music. I still love them, but that's a great rock band.
I also feel like the White Stripes' influence seems to have lasted longer and been a little wider.
Because there wasn't much else to influence people in the rock world at that time.
That's a good point.
The White Stripes and the Strokes and Arctic Monkeys, their influence is lingering because they were sort of the last batch. Rock's really faded out completely now. The last really great rock band. See, what Radiohead did was they took the Nirvana thing and they developed it. They made it viable for... Kurt Cobain didn't really have the imagination to take it anywhere. Not to put him down, but, I really think the band that really took the torch from Nirvana was Radiohead.
I can see that. It doesn't make sense sonically, but it makes sense emotionally.
Emotionally, exactly. What OK Computer was the same thing that Nevermind was 6 years earlier. I mean, musically, very different. I say to people who say Dark Side of the Moon is such a classic album, and I'm like, do you know that there's an OK Computer? Why are you listening to Dark Side of the Moon when OK Computer's been out for 20 years? It's like an updated Dark Side. It's so much better, so much more relevant to this generation. Why are you listening to Dark Side? Listen to OK Computer. People are so skeptical of Radiohead.
So do you guys want to close
I guess
out?
it is an acquired taste.
We need to wrap it up soon.
Yeah, play Make Sure It's Dead. We're running out of time.
Did we already play Make Sure It's Dead?
You played What a Time to Be Alive.
I did? Okay, so I need to play Make Sure It's Dead. Okay.
We're professionals here.
That's weird, because That's super weird. Okay. Play Make Sure It's Dead, and then...
Shit happens, man.
No, because the link says
Perfect
Make Sure
way
It's
to
Dead,
win.
and then it played the wrong song. Anyway, so do you want to let people know where they can find you one more time, and then we'll wrap it up?
You can find it on Bandcamp. The Donors. The album is called Nesting Dolls. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on all sorts of random sites. China that I've never heard of. But yeah, we're everywhere.
Perfect.
Sweeping the world one track at a time.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, let's see. Make sure... Okay, if this is not Make Sure It's Dead, I picked a link for it, but if it's not, then just let me know.
She's the new blue, she's extra spectrum. New
Right, is that the right song?
Yeah, that was the right song.
Okay, perfect. I'm just making sure.
words and new worlds. Can't blame your maker, can't blame an angel if it rains. But you can give me hell to pay. Something dying in these walls. Something dying in these walls. Make sure it's dead before you can get around. Make sure it's dead. Make sure it won't be found. Make sure it's dead. Make certain it won't breathe again. Make sure it's dead. We'll see if it had friends. She's the century's greatest enemy, vilified by the times. She'll invent the scent that brings the world to its knees.